Hello, hello, hello. It's Stephanie here, and welcome to episode 117 of the Rent to Rent Success podcast. We have got an epic episode for you today. I am joined by Alexlouise Thomas. Alexlouise is all about money mindset and building your wealth wherever you are starting from. And what I love about Alex is she breaks it down. She's really real, and she gives you that step-by-step help. And as we're going to go into today, many people can't invest in buying properties because they don't have enough to get started on their own. And one of the things that Alex does, which I think is so magic, is she brings people together to invest together and build their assets together. And we're going to get into some of those case studies later on. And we're also going to talk about why many people fail in property and how to ensure that that doesn't happen to you. So, Alexlouise, I'm so excited to have you join us here on the show. How are you?
Yeah, great. Really, really great. Thanks. Life is epic. Really epic.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. We first met at the South Wales property meet and you were speaking, and I was so impressed by you that I wanted a piece of it as well. And I came to talk to you about that, and you said I should invest in my own deals.
Brutal.
And that was when I was just starting off. And I think that what you provide is the gateway for many people to another world. But what I'd love to begin by talking about is, I know that you used to be a chef working long hours on lowish pay, and
I mean, below minimum wage. It's important for people to get that, because there's a whole world, isn't there, in property, or people who are coming into it going, you have to have loads of money or something, or it's not possible for us because we only earn an average wage. So it's really powerful for people to know that. I think it's important.
Yeah. So give it to us. Take us back in time. You were there working with the chef.
Yeah, so I left school when I was 15. I think, again, that's, I left school and home when I was 15. I had a bit of a turbulent teenagehood, shall we say. And I was already working as a pot washer in an Italian restaurant after doing work experience from school. I got offered jobs from that. I started in a little hotel, got bored of that, went to an Italian restaurant. So I had a part-time job, basically. And I hated school. It's just, I mean, I love learning. I read books like they're going out of fashion now. I have coaches and teachers and all the rest of it, but school didn't work for me. And I had a head chef who said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know." And they said, "Do you want a job? We'll train you. You can come and be a chef." And I was my mum's always cooked. She made bread when I was a kid. It's like, food's just part of who I am. And I said yes. And I just went from, I was really young, right? So for those who do listen to this, who are in Cardiff and remember the restaurant Topajijo's back in the day, this is like 25 years ago. It was a massive 4-story, it's now called 10 feet tall. It was a huge restaurant, but it had a basement restaurant. And at the age of, I think, 16 and a half, I would run that at Christmas on my own with another chef and serve like 60 people. So I loved food and I love cooking, and I'm a bloody hard worker. There's a level to which it's workaholism, not healthy work ethic at that point. And I just worked my way up. So I ended up working for Raymond Blanc at 18 in his 2 Michelin star restaurant, and did that for 3 years and kind of, cut my teeth, if you like. That's 80, 90 hours a week for not a lot of money, but really learned how to cook. Came back to Wales when I was 22 and I left Michelin star restaurants, at which point, I'm highly overqualified for working in a lot of restaurants in the sense of in the kitchen. So the jobs being offered were like, executive chef roles, doing rotas and admin. And again, I was like, I love food. So I ended up doing agency work and ended up in a little pub in Pontyclun. And short story, the lady that owned the pub hired me. Her chef was on sick. And I don't know whether he didn't come back or was fired. I'm not sure. Can't remember. But, anyway, I ended up staying there. I didn't leave. And then she sold the pub, and the guys that owned the pub basically said to me and my then partner, "Do you want to run the pub?" Because he came from catering background as well. So I was running a pub at 22, and we went from 3 staff to 18 staff in about a year, because we just went, through the roof busy, because we were selling good food. You sell something good, people come and buy it. And And that's when I bought my first house up in the valleys, to kind of link it all back to, property and stuff. And I didn't mind living where everyone else didn't want to live. I didn't want a flashy apartment in Cardiff Bay. I was happy to live up in the valleys. So we lived in Tom Revel. And it was one of those weird times that, where people go, oh, what do you want to live up there for? And it's like, I bought a house for £55,000 and it was a 3-bed end of terrace. It needed work, but it was, it was pretty big. And at the same time, to buy in Cardiff, even back then, it was 125,000 for something in Riverside that needed a full refurb. It was just, madness in my head. I guess I have a very simple way of looking at things. I'm like, if it makes sense, I do it. If it doesn't make sense, I don't do it. I didn't need a kind of to go into the figures. I mean, back then the internet didn't, it was just starting. Yeah, that's the other thing I think everyone needs to remember. We look quite young, Stephanie, but we remember the times when there wasn't the internet that we have today.
No.
This device here didn't exist. I had like probably a Nokia phone. It wasn't even iPhones back then.
Yellow Pages. We didn't even have the mobile phones to start off with. Remember that came in.
So I was 22. I just had a mobile phone. Facebook, I think, was maybe, I want to say started, maybe not. So anyway, I bought a house. It just seemed to make sense to buy something that I could afford, not buy something that I couldn't afford. That was it. I hadn't done a property course. There was no internet. There was nothing. It just made sense. So I bought it. And then again, I think the theme running through is like, I was working 18 hours a day in a pub, and people go, oh, no one works that hard. It's like, people in catering do. We were there at like 7, 8 in the morning. We'd work through till midnight, 1, 2, and varying shifts in between that. And I was driving home going, why am I going home to put my head down for 5 hours to go back again when there's a nice apartment above the pub that's empty? Because the people that used to run the pub had, sold, and the new owners had houses locally. So moved above the pub, rented the house out. That's how it started. And it worked. The mortgage was a couple of £100 a month. The rent was £400 a month. And I don't want to sound flippant, I cannot stress to anyone listening, especially if they're starting out, the importance of those figures. And I don't mean in the like, have a return on investment or a yield or anything. It's like the mortgage. Ooh, you still there?
It's fine. I'm still here.
Yeah,
I can just do fancy footwork and remove myself.
I was like, oh, where are you? I cannot stress the importance to anyone listening starting out, the importance of the rent was at least double than the mortgage cost. That's it. There was no fancy footwork behind the scenes. There was no crazy. It was just like, oh, wait a minute. If they pay me this much rent and that's the mortgage, that kind of works. And that was it. I was like, oh, this works. And did it again. I think, well, did we have buy-to-let mortgages then? We must have done. Buy-to-let mortgages, bought the next house, did the same again. And that's how it started. And my portfolio even today is the main majority of it is made up of single lets. And that's probably the only difference with what I teach my clients is they will go straight into what I would say more complex deals than I would have done back then, because they now we do get into yields and return on investment, and then the mortgage is 500, but the income is 1,000, 1.5, 2,000. So it's quicker and you have less houses. Whereas, I did the single let, I just repeated it. I was like, oh, this works, do it again. Oh, this works, do it again.
Can I just ask, how did you find the money? Because I mean, £55,000 is not nothing, and then you need, was it about 10,000 for the deposit, or how did that work? And how did you
I'm going to say it was a bit less than that. So I borrowed. So I had money. Myself and my then ex-partner, who became my husband and is now my ex-husband, we were both working, so we had income. We didn't spend all that we had. And again, it sounds so obvious, but it's so normal for people to spend everything they've got. And we didn't have new cars. We didn't buy the latest anything. I'm a make, do, amend. Probably I didn't have to create make, do, amend in my life. It's who I am. I don't like throwing stuff away. I've got an iPhone 12 now, but the phone before this was an iPhone 6, which gives everyone an idea of how long I went before I got another phone. And I only got another one because the other one just wasn't working anymore. I don't get, and that's even now, because people go, oh yeah, but now you're sorted. You can just, and it's like, no, it's staying with that mentality that keeps me growing and getting bigger. And I put any money I had into doing up the house, not to going out. I worked a lot of hours, which is a really good way to not be able to spend money because we were working. So I did a bit of both. So we had some savings. I think we put some on a credit card back then, and I borrowed some money off my mum.
I love it because
Cobbled
people
it together.
say,
that's the reality.
I haven't got the money, but you didn't have the money. You created the money from your decisions. You decided, right, I'm going to build up a portfolio. And from there, you were just looking for opportunities. How can I do this? I can save. I can not go out. That was your fun rather than just having the money go through your fingers. There was a couple of things you said, which I do want to draw out. When you're selling something good, people want to come and buy it. You said that about your food at the pub, but it's so true about whatever you're selling, whether it's properties or, rentals or whatever. And the other thing that I really notice about your story is, as you said, most people make all their income and they spend it all. And you made different choices. And those different choices to some people are going to sound like, oh, that doesn't sound fun.
It's really boring. It's not glamorous.
It's fun now, though, isn't it?
But it's fun now. Here's the thing. Back then, and this is what happened, and everyone has to get this, because if you take on the path of the way I did it, it's not an easy path. But it's not easy any way you do it. And everyone back then were like, you live where? You've got what? That whole like not spending the money, it gets that, oh, it's boring. The minute you mention budget to a lot of people are like, oh, not interested. But here's the thing. When I got to 32, 10 years later, and went, I'm financially free. I never have to work again. Here was the coolest thing in the planet. Like everyone was like, oh my God, how did you do that? And I was like, the stuff I've told you about the last 10 years that no one wanted to do. So I think the key and the distinction in my book, I have standards in my book about, to really help people get, it's almost like rules and standards for living. One of them is about delayed gratification. And I don't mean like, oh, I'll eat the chocolate cake this afternoon. I mean, like, bake a cake and eat it, a lot later. But to be 32 and never have to work again, and don't get me wrong, I still work really hard because now I do everything that I'm loving around coaching, and we're about to move house to you'll love it, amazing renovation project, and then get a farm. So it's not that I don't work and I sit around doing nothing, but I choose what I do.
Yeah.
I haven't got a boss saying you've got to be in work by this time. It's like I say, I've got to be in work.
It's like the saying that I love that Dan Sullivan said, your future is your property. And I added on, and ain't nobody building on it but you. So if you're not putting bricks on your land, creating your own future, then when you get there, you're just going to say, oh, there's nothing here for me. Oh, I've got to keep working. That's no fun. I can't retire. That's no fun. I need to work, even beyond retirement age. That's no fun. So I think there's always the 50-50 of life. And it's better to have your downside on the way to the life of your dreams that you're creating consciously. And that's what I love about what you talk about, Alexlouise. So I want to get
like that. Have the downside on the way up. That's brilliant.
Absolutely.
Exactly right. It's like, absolutely. It's like, get it out the way now than having downside for the rest of your life.
Yes.
It's just, and this course that I've just that's it finishes tonight, actually, the latest Money Mastermind course. On that course, this is the first time I've worked with people that are 18, 19, 20. Yeah. I'm so excited about that group, because until now, the people that came to me were like in their 30s when they realized that, oh, I haven't done anything yet. And they were starting to get the reality of it, of not doing it. Whereas 18 to 20-year-olds, generally, we think we can live forever. I was a bit unusual in the oh, I've got to invest. Think we can live forever and it'll never be a problem. And, old age is such a long way away. But it's an exciting group to work with. When people are getting this at that age, to be able to do it again at, by 25, 30, they'll be done.
Yeah. The
That's
magic of
the other
compound
thing. It's
interest.
quicker. Yeah,
Yeah.
compound interest, but also the younger they do it, when a client comes to me and they're still living at home and they've got no expenses and they've got earning capability, I'm like, oh my God, it's just the best. Whereas when someone comes to me in their 30s and they've got a mortgage and kids and bills and all of that stuff, it's harder. So it takes longer.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, getting the pain out the way as early as possible. And I know there'll be people listening to this who aren't there going, oh, I wish I was. It's like, well, we're not, and you can still do it.
And you can, because
absolutely.
you probably know I started when I was 45, but won't go into that. I want to come on to the book. I want to come on to the program that you have. But before we get in with that, why do a lot of people fail in property, and how can we make sure that this doesn't happen?
Brilliant. It's my favorite subject, which is why I wrote it down. I think so this, I mean, we could talk about this all day, right? But the main points are people are impatient, so they don't give it enough time. The number of people I know, they give it a go or they go on a course and then it doesn't quite go how they think it will, and then they give up. So for me, it's about context, the answer to this question. And it's about never giving up. And people give up too soon, and they give up. There's the best meme I've seen on the internet is the guy that's digging and the diamonds are literally like they're there, but he gives up. It's like that happens all the time in property. Or worse, they get there, they get a deal, the deal goes wrong, and then they go, oh, property's a disaster, I messed up. And I'm like, no, you have the best learning ever. Like the people who mess it up, they have so much experience that if they carried on, they win, but they don't. They give up. So again, it comes back to patience and stickability.
Go on.
Getting help, getting a coach, reading books, and I don't mean like, oh, come and work with me, I'm a coach. I mean like get any coach, get someone who's done it. It's the same like you're doing what you're doing and sharing how to do it. It's like, I have a coach that I work with every week. I've worked with coaches my whole life. The reason I've got now where I was when I first started out, I didn't have coaches, but from I'd say 26, I properly started having coaches, and I started dabbling in the Yes group at probably about 26, actually, when I went self-employed for the first time. That was the biggest journey for me. After leaving the pub, I started up my own catering company, and I started in personal development. I've had coaches ever since. Accountability partners, people who stay there with you and go, yeah, it's shit, but we can keep doing this, So it's having a team. And I think sometimes the team, when people are starting out, seems too big and scary. And I don't mean like have a whole team of solicitors and surveyors and this and that. I mean like the team starts with one other. It starts with like an accountability partner or a book, even a book. It's like people who are starting out, if they would just read books about money and property and make that their thing, the inspiration to carry on is massive.
Oh, yes. And what you say is so true. As humans, we're so emotional and we all think we're very rational creatures.
We're so not.
Having the people around you who are succeeded, who are succeeding, have succeeded, whether it's in books, whether it's online, whether it's in person, whether it's a personal coach or mentor, gives you it just catapults you. And I think the biggest shift towards creating success, that we've been able to create so much success in a short period of time, whereas previous decades, very little, same person, is the thinking. And that's what you learn when you have a coach and when you have a mentor.
Yeah. And spending the time as well. I think the thing that sometimes people don't get, and for a long time, I worked with coaches, therapists, mentors, because my life was in breakdown. And I think a lot of people come into this work because something's wrong. Like they failed at something, or something's not working, or they feel bad, or they just know that there must be more to life and they're not getting what it is. The thing for me that's magic now, it's taken a long time to get to this because I had a lot of stuff to deal with, is that I work with a coach now and everything's great. And it's just getting better and better and better. And I think that's the other thing, is there doesn't have to be, for anyone who's going, well, I haven't really got anything wrong, and everything's fine with my parents, and I don't feel like I've got any trauma, so I don't really feel like I have the right to have a therapist. It's like, that's not the reason for coaching and therapy and books and development. The reason is to you'll probably go on the journey anyway. It's like, I did my journey anyway, right? It took 10 years. If I'd have had a coach, I'd have done it in 2 or 3, probably. It's that whole, it speeds up what you're already going to do, because it gives people thinking time. Most people don't spend the time to organize their thoughts. Most time people don't spend the time to speak out loud what they're dealing with, to not even have someone tell them what to do. Just go, oh, that's what I'm thinking. This is what's not working. This needs scheduling. It's just like that planning time that people don't give themselves.
The thing that I have been amazed at, Alex, and I just feel like, why did nobody tell me? Is just what coaching teaches you is how to use your own damn mind to create what you want. And I've heard people say this before, and I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? Of course, this is a situational thing. This is my circumstance. But there's so much of it is in your mind. And when you learn the techniques and the skills, it's so powerful. So, Alex, what I wanted to ask you before we move on is, what did financial freedom? So you said you were working as a chef, you did a lot of different things, you started buying properties, and you became financially free at 32. I just love it if you can describe what that means.
Brilliant question, because it's such a misunderstood thing. So, and I'll describe it exactly what it was. Do you know, I didn't even own my own car at that point. So for anyone who's thinking financial freedom is like the Ferrari on the drive and the jet and, whatever, everyone's got their vision of what they think it is. What it actually means to me, and what I'm really clear about when I work with people, is my basic expenses were covered, and I never, ever had to work again if I didn't want to, right? So I didn't have what I would call the luxuries, and I do this with my clients. We have different levels of financial freedom. My bills were covered. Where I lived, I didn't pay for. So I was living in and again, to be really, so everyone gets the sense of it, I was living in a 1-bedroom garden flat in Pontypridd underneath my 8-bed HMO. And it was my idea of heaven. The garden was bigger than the flat, because my thing is outdoors, and I was growing vegetables. I had my Springer Spaniel that I was walking sometimes for 3 or 4 hours a day, and I was in heaven, because I didn't have to do anything to make sure the bills were covered. And there's something about that level of freedom that is, I don't think anyone can get until they get there. That all of the anxiety of, what if I don't work? What if I don't pay what if I don't get a paycheck? What if I don't sell to the next client? What if I don't do this? All of that anxiety's gone. It's like everything for the rest of my life is fine. If I want anything else, there's more games on, buy more property, get more things, all of that stuff. And I think that's the thing for everyone to get. This is expansive. It's not a one-time show and you're done, because human beings get bored by our very nature. So as much as I even remember my coach, who I've just had a call with now, laughing at me at the time. So I was like, I'm done. I don't need anything else. I was building my chicken coop. I was growing my vegetables. I was walking my dog. I was like, I'm done. I don't need anything for the rest of my life. And she laughed. She was like, okay, you and your chickens will be just fine then. And of course, 6 months later, I was like, okay, I'm bored of this. What's next? It's that whole, and then it's what's next. But to have the space to just go, I'm good, I'm done, there's nothing to worry about. So it's a lot, just to add in, it's a lot less money than people think.
Yeah.
It sounds very glamorous. The reality is people can achieve it much quicker than they think they can.
What I love about what you said is, and so many people come to me and they say, I just want to get out of my job. The mental weight of that is so heavy.
Oh, and the time, 40 hours a week.
40 years.
Yeah, that's a lot of time.
At a minimum. Could be a lot longer. So what they want is not just the money, or they want the money, but they want the money because of the freedom. And the other thing that you mentioned there is the anxiety. So much anxiety can go in when you don't like your job, but you're fearful of leaving because you can't leave for this reason or that reason.
Yeah.
And there's so much anxiety about your performance. And
Yeah.
it leads to health issues. It can actually shorten your life. So
Literally. Yeah.
I think the freedom of having that choice, how to spend your time, choosing to do what you do, feeling when you get up that you're living correctly, if you will, that you're living your purpose, that your heart
Yeah.
feels good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm so pleased that you explained about that.
And I think the other thing, just to like note for people, if they're at the beginning of their journey, is that some people as well get really caught on, I have to find my purpose and my meaning. And it's like, you might not know what it is until you get financially free. Because if you're working full time and you're really stressed and you're doing a load of stuff you don't really want to do, you might not know what it is. And there's a level to which it's powerful to start to find out, or you end up so to add in the beautiful picture of me financially free at 32, I also had a massive identity crisis, which, you know, people don't realize, because they're like, what have you got to complain about? You don't have to go to work. And I was like, yeah, I didn't have to go to work, so I didn't know who I was anymore. The day I said, I'm not a chef anymore, my internal identity of 80 hours a week, 60 to 80 hours a week of a chef went, well, who am I then? Literally, like, who am I? So the other thing for people to get as well is that, yes, there's huge upsides to being financially free, but the best upside was on the way up. And just like any challenge, once you get to the top, there's the next thing. It's like, where you're going next. But there's also the downside of, oh, I'm not that person anymore. So who the F am I? Literally, like, who am I? If I don't, because what's the first thing that people say to you when they meet you? They go, hey, what's your name? What do you do? Well, I'd just given up the what do I do? And I had a couple of years with friends going, I don't know what to tell people anymore. Like, who am I? I'm just this thing, this entity. Everyone else is still in work. So there's another thing, is why I do a lot of getting other people to do it. Everyone's in work. So also it's quite lonely. And I think it's really important to presence like all of it, so people plan for this stuff. Because it's like, you leave your job, there's a huge identity with a job, even if you hate it. Because you don't even get to be at home all evening complaining about your boss anymore, because they're gone. So what are you going to talk about? Massive for people to, you know, get the whole world of it, not just the shiny, oh, financially free, it's so amazing. It's like, yeah,
Well,
it's a journey.
before we go on to how you help other people do this, I would love to go into, I just want to know, how did you answer that question? How did you work it out? What happened next?
Well, yeah, so I had a few years, and I would say a few years, which was kind of led us to where we are now, where I went, okay, I'm not a chef. I was still doing property deals. So I had a level to which, you know, sometimes people ask me, I'd be like, well, I didn't want to say I'm a property developer because I didn't feel like one. I was like, I just take old buildings and do them up and rent them out. Property developer sounded way too like corporate, you know, it didn't feel like I was. So I carried on doing properties. I spent a lot of time walking. I've done a lot of therapy and coaching and, you know, dealing with who I am and my childhood and all of that world. And anyone who thinks they'll never have to deal with that, sorry, you will on some level, because it makes you who you are. So then when you're not that anymore and you're creating newly, there's like that undoing. So it's a massive personal journey. And I literally started trying things. So, and I do this now with people. I started following the breadcrumbs. I was like, well, what am I cute? And again, I was still working with a coach, right? So, and if I hadn't have been with a coach, I'd have probably gone off a cliff, you know, being medicated for depression, that kind of thing. Like, that's how powerful being with a coach was at this point. And I just started trying stuff. So I started teaching people to cook, because I was like, I'm not a chef anymore, but I had this whole letting go of that. So I had this whole story around, it's such a waste for someone to have spent 17 years in catering and then just leave it behind. So I started teaching people and doing supper clubs and talking to people. I started growing vegetables, and I just started following what I was interested in. So I started being curious about, well, what lights me up? And I'd do dream boards, and they never made sense back then. The dream boards would be covered in rural pictures, pictures of farm animals, vegetable gardens. I'd be like, what is wrong with me? Why? What does this mean? Anyway, short version, like fast forward now, I'm going into livestock farming. And it's something that I don't think the thing that we're meant to do, it's in us already. I was listening to Aubrey Marcus talk to Jordan Peterson on his podcast last night. And Jordan Peterson's talking about how there's just something in all of us that, what we're interested in, that we don't add in. It's there. And we either follow it or we don't. And if we don't follow it, good luck, because you'll probably be miserable. So there was a whole coming to terms with, I'm really into farming. I'm fascinated by a vegetable garden with leeks in it in winter. It's like, to me, it's the most beautiful thing on the planet. Yeah. And my mind is also going, that's nuts. What's wrong with you? Get a life. There's that whole. So anyway, I spent a few years try it. And that's when I then started. People were asking me for help. And I was kind of like helping people and having coffees with people. And then dealing with a level of exhaustion of like, how do I do this? And what does that mean? And that's when I then, came kind of, I guess I still teach people, but rather than teaching people cooking. And I used to speak when I was chefing. I speak about property. So I sat with it. And to be really clear, so everyone gets, it's not just all glitz and glam. It was really hard. I was quite miserable for a bit of just like, oh, what's wrong with me? I should be fine. That's the other thing people have got to give up. I should be okay. I don't need to work. I've got nothing to complain about. I need to just suck it up and get on with it. And yet I couldn't. I was like, but who am I? What am I doing? Why am I on the planet? What's the point of me? So exploring, I guess, is the best way to describe it.
And those are the powerful questions that most people don't have time to ask. And even when we do have time, we're on social media, we're listening to podcasts, we're doing all of these things, which are amazing. But we also need to put aside some time to listen to our own brain and see, who are you? What do you want to do? Become your own best friend, because you possibly know more about your best friend than you do about yourself. And when you get to know yourself at a deeper level, it just makes life so much easier.
Isn't it? It's magic. It's magic.
And that's another thing that you can get from working with a coach. But Alexlouise, I do not want to end this without letting people know, because one of the things that I think that you bring, that special bit of magic, is not only do you teach people what to do, you help them collaborate to actually buy properties together. So you were just telling me before we started recording about your very first group. So I'd love it if you could give a case study with. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's a good lead on from what we were saying of me like figuring out who I was. And I was actually the bit that I didn't say before. So I was in BNI, which is a networking event, the early morning breakfast networking event. And I was doing supper club as that. And people kept coming up to me asking me about property because they knew I was financially free. And I was like, no, I want to talk about food. Talk to me about cooking. Do you want to come and cook and eat dinner with me? And they're like, yeah. But when we do that, can we talk about property? And during that time and being in that networking event, and I just think I love structure. So BNI was my thing. There are a lot of people who find it too structured and too thing. But it made me think about who I was. And again, doing this journey of like, who am I? What am I here for? All of that. There was some guys in there. There's one guy in there, Grant, he's the leader of Dawn Stalkers, which has become a massive movement down in Penarth, doing the cold water swimming that I go to, right? So he's in the group. So he'd been in BNI since I'd been in there the first time with my catering company. And I can't remember now how it kind of came back. I just started thinking my biggest theme. So I had a lot of one-to-one clients in property as well. So again, I was kind of dancing between the two things. I'd started to work with people one-on-one who'd come to me wanting to do stuff with property and money. And I'd started troubleshooting people with existing portfolios who were struggling, that kind of thing. So I'm really good. My skill really, I know a lot about property, but my skill is people and figuring out with them what their dream is and aligning that with property rather than getting people to go down a specific strategy. So my passion really is people, right? And the biggest theme with all my one-to-one clients was they didn't have their money sorted. I was like, I had people coming to me with portfolios who couldn't tell me the interest rate or the leveraging or any of the information. I'd literally sit with them and create a spreadsheet with them. And this was common across all ages and people starting out, people already in property. So I started to basically put together all the stuff that I kept saying, like the same thing to all clients. I was like, there's some themes occurring here that everyone needs to kind of deal with. And anyway, I basically, in BNI, I changed from being cooking to helping people with their money and with property. And so I put together a course with all the stuff that I'd kind of been working with one-to-one clients. And I just said, does anyone want to come on a 4-month course with me? It's going to be a 1 workshop a month. This is back then. It's changed slightly since. But the first version was it's 1 day a month workshop, intensive. So, I will leave no stone unturned. If I think there's something to deal with, I don't just brush over it. It's not strategy. It's like, what's the person in front of me need to get free from whatever they're dealing with? So we did 4 months worth of workshop. And by the end of it, they were like, they had their money sorted. They knew what they were doing. They'd started saving. All of that stuff was starting to be in place. And I went, great, well done. Off you go. And they were like, what? I want to stay with you. And I was like, no, that's all I've got. Like, I'm just starting out. This is all I've got. And again, it doesn't matter where we are, does it, in business? If we start something new, we start something new. And Grant in particular kept saying, I want to keep meeting. This is really working for my life. It's really powerful. I was like, I've got nothing for you. Leave it with me. I'll work on it. But right now, again, I love BNI. I love structure. I love having a framework for people. I think that finished in the spring anyway. By the September, none of them had got anywhere. So no traction had happened. And I'm sort of, in the background, my brain's going, how do I keep working with people? How do I help them? What's the next thing? Whiz back to, 10, 15 years earlier, playing cash flow game in London. And a coach there, we'd played, so the cash flow game, for people who don't know, is the Robert Kiyosaki cash flow game, where you get out of the rat race on a board game. It's like a much better version of Monopoly, where you really learn stuff. Anyone who hasn't played it, who's listening to this, please buy the game, start playing it. I'm actually thinking of, even when we move to this next house, starting one monthly. So we should speak about this, because that would be so
love
cool.
to, because we're actually local to each other, aren't we?
Yeah, we're like down the road, so we could totally do this. Because I don't think it matters where you are on your property journey. You learn from the game whatever's you need to learn, because basically people play the game how they do life, right? So it's a really good mirror of like, oh, that's how I'm doing money at the moment, noticing blind spots. So anyway, when I played this game years earlier, the coach, we played it once. I can't remember which, whether, I think it was just a cash flow club, because they do get set up, which is what I'm thinking about setting up. Cash flow club. And then we played once on our own. And then the coach or whoever was facilitating it, I don't remember the detail, but I just remember them saying, now you can joint venture to get out of the game. And we did it, and we got out really fast, because all of a sudden we're doing deals together, we're pooling money, all of that. I was like, wow, that's genius. Parked it, because I thought it's never going to work in the real world, because people won't trust each other. So basically, somewhere out in the depths of my memory, this comes up. And I went back to who are now SSLGJ as their group name. And I went, look, I've got this idea. It's a bit mad, and I think it could work. Are you up for doing it? And basically it was, you guys set up a limited company, I'll facilitate you, and you get financially free together. They said yes. Roll on 5 years later, they get financially free this year. They're doing a deal for 30 flats that they're taking over another company. They're renovating 2 HMOs in Swansea as we speak. They've got, I think, 2 HMOs already and a single let. And they've stuck together. And boy, it's been it sounds so easy. We've been through everything together. Divorce, near fallout. One of the group used to be 5, now they're 4. And basically what I do is facilitate keep them together through the tough stuff. And it's worked, and they're doing it. They've pooled their resources.
They wouldn't have got so far in such a short time. All 5 got to financial freedom in 5 years. I think 5 years is so magic. It's a magical time frame. You can do so much in that time, and it goes so quickly. So you've got a program we'll talk about briefly, and also I want to touch on your book. So if I'm listening now and I'm like, oh my God, I need what Alexlouise is talking about, sign me up. Where can people find out more?
So the best place to come is to my website and sign up for my newsletter, which is only starting now, mainly because of this thing of, helping more people. So go to alexlouisethomas.com and come there. On the website, if it's not already, and it may be now, I need to check. It's happening as we speak. There is a link to a Telegram group. You can also guys can get in touch with you, can't they? If they like want. I'm pretty easy. My email and phone number is on my website. It's that simple. Like, send me a text, join my Telegram group, send me an email. But what I'm doing now is I have the Money Mastermind, the course that I kind of explained to you that started way back then with us, LGJ. I run it every year. The book has come out of that. So every year, I think I had a 1-year gap in the middle because I've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So that was kind of intense, trying to grow babies as well as grow the groups. So every year the course has got better. It now is much more accessible because it's online, it's not in person. So there's 2 hours coaching a week. There's all sorts of other stuff. The book is involved, so everyone works on a chapter of the book every week and gets coached on it. I think that's the thing. The book is more like a manual and a workbook exercise, and it's literally split 50-50. 50% is what do you want to do with your life, and 50% is all of the money stuff that it takes to get organized to be able to to invest in whatever people choose. My thing is property. I think it's just brilliant for leveraging. But yeah, people can just get in touch that way. The course always starts in September. Tickets start getting released in February. If people pre-order my book, they'll enter in a prize draw to get a free place on the course worth 1,200 quid. So, it's worth the punt. Plus, there's so much information in the book. And anyone that just buys the book, I really recommend they do it with some friends, have each other account. There's a whole part in the book about doing the book with other people, sharing the exercises, sharing their answers to make sure people do their exercises. Because the biggest thing is, if anyone, listening to this now goes, that's amazing. If you just buy my book and then just read the book and go, oh, that was nice, it's going to make no difference. Save yourself the 20 quid. Don't bother. Because, and the time. The key is the exercise. You must get that when you work with people, right? It's like there's a difference between getting something that's a nice idea and actually doing the exercises.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to end, to really take the knowledge and the information and implement it in your life.
Yeah.
Anyone who wants to can build their income and build their wealth. It just has to be a conscious thought. And you can be happy now on the way to whatever you think is going to make you happy, because the happiness is something that you can create.
Now.
Yeah, the happiness is now. So thank you so much, Alexlouise. I absolutely love what you're doing in your program, your book. You've helped so many people, and your own personal story is such an inspiration. And the other thing about you, I just love the way that you live your life. It's just with full integrity and honesty. And I just know that if people do choose to sign up, it will be life-changing for you. And I honestly commend you to go over and alexlouisethomas.com. I will put it also in the show notes. renttoRentSuccess.com/117. We'll put a link in case you're listening on the podcast, but if you're on the YouTube channel, you will see it on the video. But just as we end, Alex, any inspiring message that you want to leave listeners and viewers with?
The thing that's going to make the biggest difference is what you do on a daily basis. So we all brush our teeth every day so we don't end up in the dentist's chair. And money and life is like that. It's the stuff that we do, the micro stuff that we do every day, that makes the biggest difference in the long run. So start making the small changes now. Like, start measuring how much money you spend. It's going to change your life. Going on, doing the big extravagant things, they help too. But really the biggest difference is if you've listened to me, you've listened to Stephanie, and you're just like, oh, there's something there. Or you've heard something, you're like, oh, I haven't done that, I'm going to do that. Start doing it today and spend 5 minutes a day focusing on this stuff. It's going to make the difference. It's not the big gestures.
Yeah, it's the small stuff that you think is too small to matter that compounds. Thank you so much for joining us, Alexlouise.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me. It's really and thanks for your contribution, like getting out there and helping even more people by doing, this work along with all your other work. It's massive. and look forward to having you back on my podcast in a
Yeah,
couple of months so we can hear it the other way around and have all your journey as well.
I'd love to. Does it have a name yet? Because I know you were thinking of launching. Is that right?
Yeah. So I got my first group coming on my podcast next week. So it's going to be it's called Rock Solid Conversations with Alexlouise.
Love
it's
it.
going to be a medley of all sorts of stuff. Rock Solid Conversations with
Alexlouise. And your book is going to be called Rock Solid Money.
Rock Solid Moneymaker. Rock Solid Moneymaker. Yeah. I
just love the names. Rock Solid Conversations, the podcast, and Rock Solid Moneymaker, the book. And you can get it all at alexlouisethomas.com. So thanks Alexlouise, for being here. Thank you for watching and for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you all again next week. Bye for now.
Bye.